Afternoon session. Thanks to the State Library for a lovely lunch. So I'm just going to introduce Duncan Smith from Novelist, who will be bringing us some big picture readers advisory ideas, also well introduced by Becky Stratford this morning.
Thank you.
Can I just say, did you start the recording? Yes.
The recording?
Yeah,
It's recorded on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. As Lane and Becky have sort of already introduced me, I now have to spend a few minutes unintroducing myself. And what I mean by that is all those things that Becky said that I was going to do this afternoon, I am going to do those things, just not this afternoon. The very pragmatic sort of how to use Novelist stuff will be done at Wagga Wagga tomorrow, which will also be streamed, and then I'll be in Grafton on Friday. But I am going to stay focused this afternoon on some big picture ideas and some ways of thinking about Reader's Advisory that over the past several years we've sort of come to understand Reader's Advisory in sort of a slightly new way. But before I do that, I need to share with you the fact that my love affair with Australia started when I was 11 years old, and in grade 5 we had to pick a country of the world to write a report on, and I picked Australia. And while I was used to getting, comments on my papers from my teacher that said things like brilliant, like James Patterson, future Nobel Prize winner, those kinds of things. This one came back with a big C and a red circle and average written on it. And I was very sad about that. And so I sat down with my teacher and said, why did I get a C? I usually do much better than this. She said, the quality of your paper was excellent and up to your standards. But part of the assignment was to write away to the Australian government and get pamphlets. And you didn't do that, and I did not, and that's why you get a C. So I want you to help me undo that great wrong from all those years ago. I'm not going to have you give me pamphlets, but I would like you to do 3 things for me. I would like you to answer 3 questions for me before the end of the day and make sure that you give these to me. The first one is I want you to tell me one thing that you think I should know about Australian readers. The second thing I would like you to do is to tell me something that you think I should know about Australian library staff. And the third thing is, if I could only read one book that would tell me everything I need to know about Australia, what would that book be? So I would appreciate it if you would do those 3 things for me and then hand them over at the end of the day. One of the things that I am going to be spending some time talking about is I want us to move. I mean, you heard Becky this morning talk a lot about that it's not about just putting books in people's hands. That's not really what's at the heart of Reader's Advisory. At the heart of Reader's Advisory is the conversation that you have with readers. And increasingly, I believe our power and our value is in helping readers understand themselves. Not just the books that they are reading, but what those books are doing and saying to them and why those books matter. So that involves not a transaction, but a relationship. And involves not just handing someone a book, but having a conversation with them. So you can kind of hear some similar themes to what Becky said this morning and to what I'm going to say this afternoon. So I'm going to talk about how we can move Reader's Advisory Services, or how we can think about Reader's Advisory Services, moving it from a transaction to being an embedded relationship with the readers in your community. Now, Becky also this morning mentioned the Pew Research study, and this is the chart that she was referring to. In the U.S., when we ask public library users, what do you use the library for, 66 to 64% of them used it primarily for books. And you can just sort of see how it begins to fall off when you move away from books. But again, it's not just books, it's what books do. This gentleman, Elon Musk, you may know him, originally from South Africa, now currently residing in the United States, but we don't know how much longer that will be, depending on what happens with SpaceX. This is an important statement. I was raised by books and then by my parents. But it's not only that statement that matters, it's how, when you look at this article in Rolling Stone, when you look at the books that he talks about in that article, there are two books that he comes back to over and over again. The first one is Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. And the second one is Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman. So when you look at those two books and their themes about how empires collapse and how empires are established, he's not just talking about his financial empire. He's talking about something more profound. Remember, this is the man who invented Tesla to help reduce carbon emissions and stop global warming. But he's also the man who, if that doesn't work, plan B was we're going to the stars. And that's where SpaceX comes in. So you begin to see how his reading and his life interact with each other. And he's aware enough to have that conversation and to make those connections when he's being interviewed for an article in Rolling Stone. I want you to think about all the people that you could interview in your daily work to help them have similar realizations about how books are forming, shaping, and sustaining them. This was a blog post that came out a couple of weeks ago from Fast Company, talking about the best business book you'll read this year could be a novel. I think this is very important when we have people who might criticize the public library for not being a good value proposition because we're basically just circulating trash. To have people making statements and in a business publication having people say, you know, novels have a lot to bring to us and have a lot to offer. It's not just entertainment. They give us insights. They might actually make us better business people. So I think that's pretty important there. And then this is the other thing that I think is critically important because Ralph Waldo Emerson, he's talking about the fact that reading is important to him, books are important to him, but he really has no sense of actually how they matter or why they matter. And you don't unless you have experiences which support your own reflection on your reading experience. And again, I think public library and you are the people who can take up this work and really make a difference in not only the people's lives, but the lives in your community as well. Now, a lot of us know that this is also true, that we frequently can't remember what we read. As a matter of fact, that more than anything else is the reason we have novelists today. Is my two challenges when I was a public librarian was I could not read fast enough. And even at that early age, my memory frequently failed to serve me when the person was standing directly in front of me. But what this article really focuses on is intent. Is that if we don't have intent when we are reading, we are more likely to forget what we read. And I think there's more to it than that, but that's another factor here. And all of this comes into play at the desk. I want you to take a look at this cartoon, and I want you to think about whether you've had similar experiences or not. Now, for me, you know, just imagine me. You see that staff member there with those big round eyes? Now, I don't know whether that staff member is excited or scared. And frankly, for me, when I turned 50, I lost the ability to tell the difference. They both feel the same to me. Whether I'm excited or scared, I can't tell which one it is anymore, right? But then you have this really great reader here who lists off all these things that he is looking for in a book. And then what you've got is you've got this enterprising library staff member bringing back the perfect book, and then the reader makes the statement that really just drives me crazy. Oh, I just made all that up. Well, don't you feel like they are a lot of times just kind of making it up? When you ask them, what are you looking for? I don't know, right? Well, there's a very good reason for that. The previous article that I showed you is one of the reasons, right? The other reason is that they have not been provided with an opportunity to really reflect on and understand something about themselves as readers. They also lack the language to describe their experience. In reader's advisory work, I think two very useless words, two very useless phrases. Good book, useless. Well-written, useless. Because as we heard Becky talk about, she encountered one reader, and I'm going to show my bias here, where James Patterson was well-written and a good book. So, it's just something that without understanding what good means, what well-written means, we don't have a basis to make effective suggestions, right? And one of the great things for us is that we have the language. We have a language that can help readers understand and appreciate not only the book, but the reading experience itself and what it does for them. We can empower them to have a language to communicate more effectively with us and with their friends and colleagues about what reading is doing for them and how and why it matters. All right? Is this useful what I'm doing here? Okay, all right. Here's an example of what happened when we were looking at one reader, working with one reader. This statement happened as she was looking at some books that we were recommending. And it's that bottom phrase down there. It was really eye-opening. That's the value. Not the fact that we showed her some books that she was probably going to go away and enjoy, but the fact that her understanding of her reading changed. The promise of the public library is not that when you walk in the door that you walk out with books. The promise of the public library is that the person who walks out of your doors is different than the person who walked in, And it can happen fast, so it could happen both ways. But let me rephrase that the promise of the public library is that the person who walks out of your doors is different than the person who walked in. You want the experience in the library to be a really eye-opening one. Okay? So, Reader's Advisory Services and you operate in a context. And one of the things that we talk about at Novelist is the reading landscape. And that landscape basically has three significant components. There's a discovery component, a discernment component, and a delivery component. All right? And so, for example, here's how discovery has worked for me recently. I was in my office, and one of my staff members was at the door, and she was kind of holding a book. And I said, "Yes, Jillian." And she said, "You're going to Australia, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Here's Peter Carey's new book. He's Australian." And she said, "I think you'll like it." That's discovery. I didn't know Peter Carey had written a new book. Had no idea that I might like it. And so that's an example of discovery. Discernment was when I looked at the book, looked it up in Novelist, and determined for myself, yes, this is the kind of book that I would enjoy reading. And so I made the decision that the book was right for me. And delivery, Jillian had kind of taken care of that because she'd handed it to me. But this plays out all the time. All of your readers are going through all these phases all the time. And what's interesting in this case, discovery happened with not a family member, but a friend and colleague. I didn't have to, I did use professional reviews. I also had some prior knowledge of Peter Carey and the types of books that he wrote. And that helped me to make discernment, and delivery gotten taken care of, right? So those are the three parts of the landscape. And this is an example of a reader and how this landscape might play out in his life. In the case of Jack, you were not seeing this little end of it here, but where it says reader personality, avid is the first variable, and then casual is the far variable. Borrower versus buyer, tech savvy versus Luddite, and ebooks versus physical books. So if we take a quick look at this, we see that Jack is a person who's an avid reader. He tends to be a book borrower. He tends to be a Luddite, and he tends towards physical books. All right, so that tells us something about who he is. When we look at the kinds of books he reads, we see that he's reading a kind of variety of things here. And actually, it's not just books, but he's also listening to audio as well. The things that I think are important on this slide are what Jack wants from the library, more of what he really enjoys, and a deeper knowledge of what's available. So he wants the library to be a place where he can go and physically borrow more of what he likes, but he also needs help in understanding more of what's available and what he might like. And then if you look at how Jack finds out what's up, he's got lots of different channels that he's getting information from, including book information. And so a question to ask yourselves are you on all of Jack's channels? Or what channels is the library message appearing on? And what channels are you appearing on? Because one of the things that I think is critically important about these conversations and having them is you need to let the public know about your expertise. You need to be assertive about what you know. And a great example of a library that's doing that in the States is Multnomah, Multnomah. If you Google Multnomah and My Librarian, you'll see that they've actually created many web pages for some of their staff who are experts in certain areas. And so people can go to their website, and if you're interested in crafts books, you can find the librarian who knows a lot about crafts, who is blogging about craft books, who is tweeting about new craft books as they come in, and you can actually ask her questions. You know, so if I was a crafty person, I would know to go to her. And that's what I mean about connecting users with your expertise. Now, different readers want different things, but here's where I think we are today, that the public library is not a primary source of book discovery for many people. You can take a look at your hold shelves or your pickup shelves. Every one of those holes tells me that that's a person who discovered a book somewhere else or learned about a book somewhere else, and then basically checked to see if the library had it. So that wasn't discovery. We didn't help them discern. All we did is deliver. Okay? And so, you know, that's where we are right now. what I want to talk about is how we rebalance that equation, how we expand the value across all these different elements that we can add and provide. The other thing that I want us to think about is that we spend a lot of time talking about face-to-face interactions, and we tend to do a lot of time talking about book-oriented programs, but in-house self-directed and digital self-directed tend to be areas where we don't put as much time or energy. And that is different than what our users are doing. If you think about it, I'm going to say, does gate count mean anything here? Okay. I'm so happy that I said gate count and not door count. An interesting exercise for you is to take your gate count for a day and write down that number, and then look at the number of reference questions, directional questions, informational questions that you've answered that day. Total that up and subtract it from your gate count. And what we find out in the US is that the overwhelming majority of our users are not talking to us. They are helping themselves. Okay? And the scary side of that is that it doesn't matter that you have purchased the book that they are looking for, that it's shelved appropriately and in the right space and is on the shelf. If they don't find it, then you didn't have it. And they will evaluate you based on their success or failure. So to the extent that you can make sure that your collections are very browser friendly, and that you're doing strategies to increase the findability of books when users are doing it on their own, is a very good and important thing to be. Let me ask you a question. What's Apple's biggest product? Just think about it. Is it that iPhone that I have over there in my pocket? Is it the iPad that I have back in the hotel room? Is it the any of their various other products? That loyalty is right up there, but their biggest product is the store, according to their marketing. And the reason the store is their biggest product is not just because it's physically pleasant, but it's about the experiences and what happens inside it. And what happens inside it is that the stores are always connected to the community. And increasingly in Apple stores, there are spaces for community events. Maybe spaces similar to this one, maybe not. But for outside organizations to meet in the Apple Store. They're staffed by individuals who are constantly educating visitors about their products and services, helping visitors understand how to take the perfect picture with your iPhone, how to achieve this or that, and which products need to come together to do that. Focused on helping users meet their goals and expanding user capacity to make more effective use of technology, and specifically Apple products. Space for events, but if you don't want to talk to the staff, you can actually, it's very self-service oriented and self-directed options are available. So, but again, it's very much about helping users achieve their goal, not about the iPhone, the iPad, the headphones, not about the products themselves. The product really is the services and the engagement and the eye-opening experiences that happen there, and that results in loyalty. Okay? So when I think about readers, and we think about Readers Advisory Services, we want to figure out are we doing the work that we need to do to help readers achieve all these different things? Are we helping readers discover more authors and titles that they love? Whether that's us having a conversation with them at the desk or in the stacks, or as one of the readers that we worked with recently told us when they said, oh, I never get recommendations for the library, I just go and pick up my books there. But then as we went through a list of services, she said, well, you know, sometimes I'll pick up something off of a display. In her particular library, she used the self-loan kiosk. Well, that's her book receipt had book recommendations on it. And so she said, occasionally I will go back and check one of those out. And, oh, yeah, there's that library newsletter that I signed up that sends me lists of mysteries every. Yeah, no, we're not helping you on the recommendation side. But until we had that conversation, we were so embedded in her book finding strategies that she didn't really appreciate all the value we were bringing. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because we were adding value. It's a bad thing in that she might not have appreciated all the ways that we were helping her, right? Discover more authors and titles. Furthermore, is develop an understanding of what they like. To go back to that list generating patron in the cartoon, I mean, he said he made it up, so that really wasn't what he liked. But giving them an opportunity to articulate, to learn the language, to express what they like so that we can help them and other people can help them find more of what they're looking for is important. Expand their book finding strategies. What are ways that we can help users develop more and better ways, more effective ways to get what they want and to find what they want and to connect that success back to the library as the source that's providing it? Whether it's newsletters, whether it's resources, whether it's programs, whatever, right? We also want to help readers understand the true value of their reading experiences and how reading really is supporting them in becoming the people they aspire to be and sustaining them in having hopes, aspirations, and dreams. And then finally, deepen their reading experiences by sharing it with others, whether that is in a book discussion group that the library sponsors or that we support out in the community, whether it is writing a review to go into the catalog, whether it's reviewing a book list. I mean, you know, Becky likes horror fiction and Stephen King. It really just literally scares me to death. It always scared me. I never read it. I don't want to stay up that late at night. But what I used to do is with my Stephen King readers, I would say, so is this a good one? Is he still writing as good as he used to write? Who else do you read when he's not writing fast enough for you? You know, and I was doing that for me, right? I was doing that so that I could have something to say to the next Stephen King reader. But what I came to realize is the reader viewed that as a service. The reader viewed the opportunity to share their knowledge and expertise and their experience as a service, as a library service. It was something that validated them, that made them feel good, and allowed them to contribute to the library. So when you think about all the different ways that we can work with readers, these are just some of them, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but on the Novelist website, we have what we call the Reader's Advisory Prescription Guide. And what it is you can download this guide, and this form is in it. And you can go through and check off which services you provide, which services you think you want to do more of, and map it to the readers in your community. So it's a way of sort of a very quick and easy assessment of all the different ways you're serving readers or can serve readers and whether you're paying attention to them or not. Okay? All right. So now I get to the scary part of the program for me because I'm going to switch modes. So how many of you are familiar with this book called Queen Sugar? Not at all. That's okay. It's actually kind of a better experience for me. But Queen Sugar, there's the description of the book. And it really sort of was a first novel that kind of got nice reviews and was coming along. And then this woman named Oprah came along and turned it into an HBO special or a TV series, and then that just sort of catapulted it in the United States. But what I want to do in the next few minutes, and how is my time, by the way? Am I running over?
15.
All right, perfect. All right. I want us to actually walk a reader through this process and see how this kind of can work with adding value to a reader's life. All right. So what I'm going to do is I have a video somewhere. Nope, not there. Yeah, Alan, you're going to have to bail me out here.
I think Eric has Sophie Escape.
Okay.
That should be on the desktop.
Right. And then we'll come back to that in a minute. Yep. Okay, so
I'm going to tell you about today. It's called Queen Sugar, and it's by Margaret and Natalie Bazille. This is a very different kind of African-American themed book. It's about a young woman who is living in LA with her son, enjoying the LA lifestyle, when she gets word that her father has left her some land. And that land happens to be in the middle of Louisiana, sugar country. So she decides that, well, maybe this is the change I've been seeking. And so she goes back home to take care of the sugarcane farm. And it's an eye-opener for her in many ways, not just dealing with sugarcane cutting and all of that, which she's never done before, but she also has to kind of grapple with herself in terms of this is something I can do and what it will mean for her or her son. But there are several surprises along the way, and you do learn a lot about cutting sugarcane if you've never had that experience. But I would definitely recommend it to anyone. It's a great read. I'm going to tell you about.
okay, so thank you. So basically what I do is say, tell me about a book you've read and enjoyed, and then she talks about this book. And, there are a variety of things that we could do with this reader and that we could do if I had more than 15 minutes, and we're not. But what I want to do is kind of go back to, I can get to it. Thank you. Yeah. So what I do with this reader is say to her, I want you to, are you interested in finding some more books to read? And she said, I'm always interested in finding more books to read. And I said, okay, great. So what I want you to do is I want you to go to your library's catalog. I want you to look up Queen Sugar, and in the record for Queen Sugar, you'll see some books that we think you might like. And I want you to take a look at those. And once you've done that, I want you to drop me an email and let me know what you think, okay? And so what she does is she writes back and she says, Duncan, I liked most of the books. Here is my breakdown. Placed on hold today based on reviews, How It All Began, Stern Men, The First Time, Mama Dearest. Probably wouldn't read because main characters are more juvenile or teens, not my daughter, The Joy School. But we'll read Emma and Me. It's based in North Carolina. There's some domestic violence aspects in it. And even though the main character is a child, I'd still read it. Go figure. Have already read 72-Hour Hold. Will read the others. Thanks for adding to my reading pleasure. I do like this feature and will share it with my book club. I kind of view that as a big kind of win, right? And we just picked up increased circulation by 4. And this reader also is understanding that while she may not like younger readers, she may not like younger readers, but she may not, she definitely doesn't like younger narrators, right? That if there are other elements in the book, that negative can be overridden by other positives. And so she has this sort of insight into herself here, is what I'm thinking. All right? Notice this all happened by email. She was able to make decisions about these books just by looking at what was in the catalog. And so it wasn't just about me having that face-to-face interaction with her, but it was a way that the value of that kind of conversation could be extended into a digital environment. Okay? Now, Ursula Le Guin, who we just lost this year, and I also know that you guys just lost a very important writer here. Sad about that. As a matter of fact, I will be reading some of his books when I go back to the U.S. as a result of some of the things I've read. Discovery. So thank you for bringing me here so I could encounter all that, right? This gets at the heart of what we're really looking at here, is that the value and the experience of reading in books is something that shouldn't make sense, doesn't make sense, but it does make sense. But it happens, it won't happen necessarily if readers don't have the opportunity to reflect and to talk about their reading. You, more than anybody else, have the capacity to listen, to invite readers to tell you their stories and to listen. And I think at the end of the day, that's the eye-opening experience that readers will remember, and that will have the potential to have a lasting difference in their lives. Not just the fact that we've put some books in their hands. And to kind of show you how all this works, the reader that I just showed you is a woman named Alice. And after the video, and then after her feedback on the recommendations, suggestions that I sent, I asked her to send me some significant moments in her life. And so, with her permission, I'm going to read you Alice's short autobiography. Interested? Okay, all right. Significant events in my life. Graduating from Duke University in 1971. I grew up in Durham in a cocoon of blackness, surrounded by African Americans who owned their businesses, educated me, kept me healthy, preached to me, and encouraged me to reach high. Going to Duke was culture shock, but I found another side of myself. The experience enlarged my world and my life. Now what you need to understand is Durham, Duke University in Durham, is a private, sort of the southern equivalent of an Ivy League institution. And for the sports fans in the audience, they occasionally claim that they can play basketball. But forget it. But it's a very white institution. Okay. And in 1971, I bet you that Alice was one of around 20 or so students enrolled at that institution. And so even though she grew up looking at that institution, living a few miles away, it was a completely different world for her. Okay? Number 2, moving away from Durham against my mother's wishes. My mom used every persuasive trick she could until she was left with, "I'll die if you leave." I did, she didn't, and all was well for the next 40 years. Number 3, marrying the wrong man but getting out of it in 4 months. Met at Thanksgiving, fell in love, married in April, moved to Cleveland, back in my house in Tampa by July. It's a short story. The other tape I have of Alice talking about a book she read and enjoyed was Gone Girl. and she talks a lot about how you really can't believe that somebody that you thought you loved could do something like that. Here we go. Number 3, moving back to Durham in 1989. This was the first time that I decided where I wanted to live that was not the result of a job or a promotion. My promotion was to Chicago, and I said no. I was tired of moving, making new friends, finding a new church. I actually did a matrix of what I wanted in my living locale. It came down to Durham or Charlotte. Durham had the plus of family. Charlotte had a guy I was dating. I chose Durham and have never regretted that decision. Number 5, being with both parents when they each passed peacefully. I think my being there helped them. I know it helped me. 6, buying a condo in the heart of downtown Durham, the best financial decision I have ever made. And in the last 15 years, I've been fortunate enough to live less than half a mile from where I work. Hopefully, my involvement in downtown organizations has helped to strengthen downtown. My leadership skills have also been strengthened as well. It's an exciting time. I want you to think about that, about Alice's life story. And I want you to think about the story of Queen Sugar. An African American woman moves away to Los Angeles and then comes back home, where she basically takes over the family sugarcane farm and builds a life for herself, a better life for herself. But that journey that's in that story is also the journey that Alice knows something about from her own life. That's the beauty of what we can do. That's the power and the magic that we have to bring to not only our work, but to the people who come through our doors and hopefully leave as someone different than the person who came in. So this is the work we have to do, and I appreciate very much you letting me spend a little bit of time with you this afternoon to talk about it. Be happy to take questions. Thank you very much. The chatty bunch out there. Okay. All right. You've got homework that you have to give before you leave. So thank you for that, and we'll move on, Alan. All right? Thank you, sir.
Thanks to Duncan. We've got a little Reader's Advisory bag as a gift for him. Presentation time.
I'm sorry, thank you.
So now it's time to have a stand and share ideas or inspiration that you can take from Duncan with you back to work, and just try to share with someone different from this morning and also lunchtime that you chatted to. Just for 10 minutes.